Conspiracy theories have a long history, but the actual term, conspiracy theory, emerged a few decades ago, and the term took on the derogatory connotations. Hence, addressing someone as a conspiracy theorist serves as an insult. In recent years, scholars have paid increasing attention to beliefs in plausible false narratives that exaggerate, idealize, or misconstrue reality, such as beliefs in myths of science and pseudo-history. Defined as a subset of false narratives in which the ultimate cause of an event is believed to be due to a malevolent plot by multiple actors working together. Although this definition of a conspiracy theory is not exhaustive, it does capture the crux of most such beliefs. Conspiracy theories deserves greater coverage for a number of reasons. Since the early 1990s, for example, polls have consistently indicated that upwards of 70% of Americans believe some form of conspiracy was responsible for President Kennedy's death, and that the September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks was intentional, allowed by high-ranking officials in the United States government. Yet, of all the conspiracy theories that exist, one thing remains a mystery. How does a conspiracy theory, from years ago, become a living fact? Take for example, Star Trek. Many believed that the entire concept of the movie was science fiction, yet today we walk around with a small electronic device that allows us to access information, monitor health, etc., as shown in the movie. The same holds true with computerization coupled with technological advancement in every facet of our lives. Amid the claims for every controversial topic that cannot be defended beyond a reasonable doubt, typically gets labeled as a conspiracy theory. Why? When we take an objective look at the information surrounding the biggest conspiracy theory of the 20th century, that of the moon landing, the fact remains that there's way more evidence to support the theory that man has never stepped foot on the moon. People like me and others who deny a plausible moon landing are referred to as a bunch of crazy tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy kooks that need to increase their medication. Conversely, NASA themselves have admitted to on more than one occasion that proves without a doubt that we have never even left low Earth orbit, let alone landed a man on the moon. To obtain a proper perspective, let's go back to school and get a refresher course on the different atmospheres surrounding the Earth, as the following information is critical to disproving the claim that man has landed on the moon, so please bear with me. First, we have the troposphere. This is where all of our weather occurs, and it is the lowest layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It starts at the Earth's surface and extends up to a height of 20 kilometers. Next, we have the stratosphere, which extends to about 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface. This is where our ozone layer resides and protects us from dangerous UV rays. It is also the layer where aircrafts travel as it's free from weather disturbances. Now we arrive to the mesosphere, where most meteors burn up on entry. The mesosphere stretches up to 85 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Next, we have the thermosphere, and this layer extends up to 690 kilometers from the Earth's surface, and the air here at this height is very thin. Furthermore, temperatures here start to get really hot, ranging anywhere from 200 degrees Celsius to 500 degrees Celsius, and 500 degrees Celsius to 2000 degrees Celsius in the upper region. And last but not least is the exosphere. The temperature in the exosphere can vary from 0 degrees Celsius to 1700 degrees Celsius. The exosphere is the outermost layer of the Earth's atmosphere and is around 10,000 kilometers from the Earth's surface. According to NASA, low Earth orbit is around 1,930 kilometers from the Earth's surface. Therefore, before telling you the reasons why it is impossible for us to go beyond the exosphere, and for that matter even past the thermosphere, let's listen to what some NASA experts have to say about this topic.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Hang on a second, so what you're saying is that in order to send humans through this region, we need to solve the challenge of getting through the Van Allen radiation belts? I'm confused. Didn't you already solve this challenge back in 1969, when astronauts were sent to the Moon, followed by 5 subsequent visits after that?
But we're also really pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
Interesting, she's a NASA astronaut. However, I guess no one bothered to tell her about the first time that we left low Earth orbit. I presume she might be too young to remember. In the next clip, we have another astronaut that wasn't informed about the moon landing 48 years ago.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Once we travel beyond low Earth orbit, the crew will be exposed to larger amounts of radiation. So we have to design both the crew protection systems and our electronic systems to withstand this radiation.
So, that would mean that Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin were all extraordinary men able to withstand the brutal radiation, seeing as how these challenges are still yet to be solved. So, how is it that we had the technology to achieve this amazing feat back in 1969, but we're still working on the technology in 2020, over half a century later? Perhaps, I managed to find a very clever and well-informed astronaut that will totally clear up any misunderstandings for us and explain exactly why we're not able to return to the Moon, and break through those Van Allen radiation belts. Have a listen to what this clever chap has to say.
I'd go to the Moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
This guy. Oh boy. He's a living example of what can happen to you when exposed to all that out-of-space radiation. Seriously folks, you can't make this stuff up, this is one of America's finest. Showing these admissions by NASA, I can easily end this segment right here, and my point would be easily proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Unfortunately, some hardened skeptics out there are unable to digest this damaging evidence, as common sense is a flower that does not grow in everybody's garden. Hence, let's take this theory to the next level. This here is the lunar module now proudly displayed at the National Air and Space Museum. According to NASA, the primary materials to build the module were aluminum alloy, stainless steel, titanium, nickel steel alloy and heat-resistant glass. If this is the case, we have a profoundly serious discrepancy here. If you remember, I went through the different atmospheres that surround the Earth. Both the thermosphere and the exosphere have temperatures ranging from 0 degrees Celsius to 2000 degrees Celsius. Therefore, by examining the melting points of the primary metals that were used to build the lunar module. Interestingly, the aluminum alloy has a melting point of 463 degrees Celsius. Stainless steel has a melting point of 1510 degrees Celsius. Nickel steel alloy has a melting point of 1453 degrees Celsius, and of course the heat-resistant glass for the windows has a melting point of 760 degrees Celsius. This clearly indicates that the lunar module along with its occupants would have disintegrated well before it passed through the thermosphere, let alone surviving the Van Allen radiation belts in the exosphere. To protect the astronauts from the Van Allen radiation belts, the lunar module would have required 6 feet of lead shielding. Instead, here's what they had for protection. The only shielding provided was the paper-thin outer hull of aluminum and their suits consisting of glass fiber, some aluminum fibers, and silicon rubber. It's remarkably interesting that the astronauts were protected from the radiation by a thin film of aluminum, while on Earth, lead shields are required to take a dental X-ray. In conclusion, when NASA admittedly to never having left low Earth orbit, along with the absence of materials that could withstand such extreme temperatures, and cosmic rays in space, how on earth can anyone with a right mind believe that we ever went to the Moon? Taking fundamental physics coupled with NASA's admission, Landing on the Moon was nothing more than propaganda, that took over half a century for the facts to surface. Unsurprisingly, it's interesting to see how the masses are manipulated into believing the opposite of what is happening and accepted as truth, especially when people are unable to research the facts. Therefore, in the case of a moon landing, the denial thereof is not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. Those shrewdly guiding propaganda cleverly take information intended to be concealed, and overwhelm the masses with false information, transforming the truth into a theory. This proves to be an effective solution in keeping information concealed when the masses are unable to verify the facts. As a result, the topic becomes a conspiracy theory. As technology exponentially advances, people are able to research and examine information, allowing them to establish the truth, despite the efforts made to keep the masses in the dark. Throughout the last 2 decades, more and more information is being exposed, through the Internet, proving that conspiracy theories have been correct all along. It is for this reason that those astutely guiding the propaganda are vigorously pressing efforts to censor information accessible through social media. The global elitists have an underlying agenda, and the last thing they want is to have is an informed public who can clearly see what they are doing and how they are stripping the public of their rights and freedoms a little bit at a time, trying to make it unnoticeable. For example, take the most recent global issue, the manufactured pandemic. Although thousands of doctors have come forward to debunk the authenticity of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the efficacy of the available remedy, hydroxychloroquine combined with azithromycin, the globalists have turned verifiable information into disinformation. The main objective is to usher in the Agenda 21, to establish a new world order that will include the culling or depopulation of people, yet they have managed to convert the truth into a conspiracy theory. Most people suffer from normalcy bias, blinding them from the truth. As a result, the government capitalizes on this weakness by creating the illusion that they are working in the best interest of the public. Nothing could be further from the truth.
There's too much evidence that the COVID regime is political, and our leaders are lying about it. Tonight there is conclusive proof of that, a remarkable story. A reporter with the Fox 17 TV station in Nashville, a man called Dennis Ferrier, caught that city's top officials hiding key health statistics, and for no justifiable reason. Ferrier uncovered a series of emails between the mayor's office, that would be Nashville Mayor John Cooper, who is a Democrat, and the city's health department. In those emails, city officials discussed the fact that only a very low number of coronavirus cases have been traced to bars and restaurants in the city. As of June 30th of this year, for example, nursing homes and construction sites in Nashville each produced more than 1,000 cases of the coronavirus. Bars and restaurants, just 22 cases total. Numbers like this could be great news for the city of Nashville. Bars and restaurants have been suffering there for months under crushing COVID restrictions. Residents would have been thrilled to learn that bars and restaurants were safe once again. But the mayor refused to tell them that. He hid that information. After reviewing the new health numbers from bars and restaurants, a woman from the health department called Leslie Waller emailed this to Mayor Cooper's office. Quote, "This isn't going to be publicly released, right? Just info for the mayor's office." A senior advisor to Mayor Cooper, Benjamin Eagles, responded this way, quote, "Correct, not for public consumption." Not for public consumption? Why would that be? These aren't the nuclear codes. This isn't national security information. It's public health data, or it should be public. A month later, a reporter in Nashville heard rumors that bars and restaurants there were safer than the city was admitting they were. So he emailed the health department to find out what exactly was going on. What are the numbers? Emails now show that behind the scenes, this simple request for transparency panicked city officials. They schemed among themselves to hide what they knew. Quote, "We have certainly refused to give counts per bar," wrote one. Why is that? Why would they refuse to give those numbers? Here's the answer, and this is a direct quote. Because those numbers are low per site. Oh, the numbers are low, so we hide them. Hide all good news. That's the policy. Otherwise, the fear might subside, and our power along with it. So why are they so afraid to tell us the real numbers? You know the answer. The more data you have about the virus, the more facts, the more science, the less frightened you may be. And that's why they always emphasize how many people have died, almost 200,000, but almost never who died. If you knew the details, you might realize that getting a drink at a bar in Nashville or for that matter, sending your children to school in person, poses very little risk to anyone. COVID-19 remains what it has always been, overwhelmingly a threat to the elderly and to people who are already sick. The median age of coronavirus death in this country as of June 1st is 75 years old. 90% of all deaths have occurred among people over 55. Americans under the age of 44 account for just 2.7% of coronavirus deaths. This does not mean that COVID-19 is not dangerous. Of course it is. It is dangerous. It's just not dangerous to the overwhelming majority of people who are being destroyed by the COVID-19 restrictions. And that is unforgivable. There's no justification for it. They don't even want to talk about it, and so they don't.
Funnily enough, since 2007, the mention of the Illuminati was dismissed as a conspiracy theory, yet after slowly desensitizing the masses, today it is a well-known truth widely spoken of and accepted as normalcy. All truth passes through three stages: first it is ridiculed, second it is violently opposed, and third it is accepted as self-evidence. A conspiracy theory is the adaptation of an erroneous subject that is widely accepted, through propaganda that is proliferated through the mainstream media. This creates divided opinions among the public, confusing the masses as to what the truth is. An informed public is dangerous to politicians and even more hazardous to the global elitists who astutely maneuver events to usher in their clandestine agendas. There exists another conspiracy theory known as Operation Mockingbird. For decades, it was an alleged large-scale project undertaken by the CIA beginning in the 1950s in which they recruited American journalists into a propaganda network. The recruited journalists were put on a payroll by the CIA and instructed to write fake stories that promoted the views of the intelligence agency. Although reports led to a series of congressional investigations done in the 1970s under a committee that was set up by the U.S. Senate, the committee investigations looked into government operations and potential abuses by the CIA, the NSA, the FBI and the IRS. Though declassified documents show that this type of operation occurred, it's never been officially confirmed as the title of Operation Mockingbird. It's also never been officially discontinued. Once again, what was considered by many to have been a conspiracy theory for decades, eventually surfaced as the truth. The mainstream media is owned and controlled by the global elite, dictating what they want you to see and hear.
Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Former CBS News President Richard Salant explained the primary role of the media. Quote, "Our job is to give people not what they want, but what we decide they ought to have." Canadian writer Ken Adaki added, quote, "What most Americans believe to be public opinion, is in reality carefully crafted and scripted propaganda designed to elicit a desired behavioral response from the public. Due to normalcy bias, the public is afraid to venture off the beaten track from what they have been conditioned to believe from a young age. For example, did Christopher Columbus genuinely discover North America? When researching the facts, it is quickly established that he did not. The native Indians were already here. You only see what they want you to see, remember that. Contrary to popular belief, the process of mind manipulation or control doesn't require sci-fi gadgetry or hypnotism, it is present right before our naked eyes and ears. Currently, the average American spends approximately 150 hours per month watching television, absorbing mindless information that is all fiction, the most sophisticated medium of worldwide communication. But due to this inevitable saturation of content, viewers are increasingly susceptible to the mainstream media molding their opinions and attitudes, influencing what is acceptable versus what is not. Unfortunately, by surrendering themselves to such a level of obedience, viewers allow these various corporate watchdogs to penetrate what they think, but not how to think aside from the avenue of television. Political agendas or motives are commonly and gradually introduced through music videos and movies to subconsciously acclimate or condition its viewers. To maneuver the public into believing that Christopher Columbus discovered North America, the public was inundated with movies about the cowboys and native Indians, portraying the natives as savage people. To the contrary, it was the complete opposite. An individual's perception of the alleged truth, as opposed to actuality, repeatedly inundating the public with lies and positively reinforcing it by doing so through lies, will ultimately in your eyes be perceived as the truth, while there is a definitive contrast between fact and fiction. One's perception of the truth may be relative to accrediting it to source amnesia. Source amnesia encompasses the notion that the brain subconsciously stores the memories of headlines, slogans and music, whether the information they embody is legitimate, or not knowing what the government is, in addition to not knowing who taught what it was. For instance, news organizations often stir up or implicate source amnesia through the detrimental exploitation of headlines with question marks, credible sources or quotes around unconfirmed terms. Consequently, the human brain recollects the information, but disregards the sources, credibility, and its assisting minute and deceitful annotations. Testimonial propaganda is one of many mediums of persuasion where an authoritative or famous figure is attached to or endorses a product. However, if this character paints an idea of how absurd their slaves will be to comply with such beliefs, or if this adversarial idea, a person or a group of people associated with transfer propaganda, to something that the masses will reject, a pack of vicious wolves will attack, isolating them from society while this natural emotional reaction occurs. The lower brain triggers the effects of shame, causing the analytical portion of the brain to shut down and conform, initiating controversial, not logical sequences and responses to the stereotypical conspiracy theorists' modeled or illusion, and immediately dismisses the thought, through the utilization of shameful rhetoric or mockery, inducing a lower hierarchical power, maneuvering the general public to automatically reject them as lunatics. If the mainstream media distorts a story, positioning the context of a particular agenda, you either obey or disobey, and be condemned as an unorthodox seeker of being a radical rebel. Now you have become acquainted to the black and white choices of the daily brainwashing that we are confronted with predominantly, through what the media prohibits. It has always been an us versus them mentality, no gray, all or nothing choices. The cycle of desensitizing is just another vulgar consequence of perpetuated exposure to one's fear. The purpose for this is simple: your brain is wired to react to danger and fear, which are basic survival instincts. The media companies are fully aware of this, and they are intentionally manipulating and controlling you because, from the media's perspective, fear equals money. The obsession to search for the truth is sought by many, but good intentions can always be exploited through organizations and corporations who understand human psychology, and they have their own agendas in motion. Hence, people need to make a conscious effort to put a question mark at the end of every news headline, and you need to remind yourself daily that you are not willing to be controlled or manipulated. It is factual, within seconds whenever you turn on the television you are being controlled, as your brain immediately goes into an alpha level of consciousness. The alpha level of consciousness heightens your imagination, visualization, memory, learning and concentration. It lies at the base of your conscious awareness and is the gateway to your subconscious mind. Consequently, decisions are not being made by you. That's a bold statement to make, but it is absolutely true. This is known as the illusion of control. No matter what channel you select to watch, they are programming you, your values, beliefs, and ideas. In the midst of the recent pandemic that has embraced the entire planet, there exists a source that is keeping people informed and united, amid the lockdowns and draconian restrictions which has no scientific basis for its enforcement. Yet, conveniently the release of a documentary entitled, The Social Dilemma, has been aired, informing the public as to the dangers of social media and the effects it has on the mind psychologically. Although, there is much truth in the contents of the documentary, there is one lingering thought that one must be aware of: an uninformed public is useful to the government and globalists, an informed public is a danger. There are many mind-bending topics found on social media. However, there is also information that keeps the public informed as to the truth that is taking place around us. Being left at the mercy of the mainstream media will forever place you in a state of illusion, for the media only shows you what they want you to see and hear. The many episodes taking place today are easily explained, if you have the right foundational information to support the events. The word revelation by definition is the divine or supernatural disclosure to humans of something relating to human existence or the world. Taking biblical text written in this book along with the books of Matthew and Timothy into consideration, you will quickly discover the correlation between what is taking place and what was written thousands of years ago. Interestingly, many people believe the events predicted by icons such as Nostradamus. Yet, many of his predictions were already forewritten before his existence. Although many have taken credit for such predictions, Bible text is the only reliable source with pinpoint accuracy that can predict or prophesy future events, because the true author is God himself. Sadly, most people reject and refuse to take biblical predictions into account, despite its accuracy. Let's examine a few examples to verify the trueness of the Bible's accuracy. Matthew chapter 24 verse 3. As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately and said, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Matthew chapter 24 verses 4 and 5. Jesus answered them, "Watch out that no one misleads you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will mislead many."
Jose Luis de Jesus Miranda claims to be the second coming of Jesus Christ, and his followers believe every word.
I am the second coming of Christ.
We first introduced you to de Jesus Miranda in 2006. He runs a worldwide organization, Creciendo en Gracia, or Growing in Grace, that he claims has millions of followers. He preaches a message of freedom to indulge.
This message tells us that we're perfect, that there's no sin, that there's no devil.
And also no hell.
If they call you a sinner, we feel hurt.
That message, one theology expert told us, appeals to followers.
So people think of the Christian church as being a downer, as always talking about people being sinners and so forth.
The danger, Mitchell warned, is that with such devout followers, this has signs of a cult.
Matthew chapter 24 verse 6. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Make sure that you are not alarmed, for this must happen, but the end is still to come.
Good afternoon. On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime. We are joined in this operation by our staunch friend, Great Britain. Other close friends, including Canada, Australia, Germany, and France, have pledged forces as the operation unfolds. More than 40 countries in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and across Asia have granted air transit or landing rights. Many more have shared intelligence. We are supported by the collective will of the world.
Matthew chapter 24 verse 7. For nation will rise up in arms against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines and earthquakes in various places.
There's been another blow to the meat supply chain, prompting fears of a food shortage.
Matthew chapter 24 verse 10. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another.
We need to make sure that everybody continues to let us know where those folks are. You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Undisputedly, it is clearly evident as to the pinpoint accuracy of Bible text. Let's take a quick look at what people will be like. 2 Timothy chapter 3-5. But understand this, that in the last days difficult times will come. For people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, slanderers, without self-control, savage, opposed to what is good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, loving pleasure rather than loving God. They will maintain the outward appearance of religion but will have repudiated its power. So, avoid people like these. Nothing supersedes biblical prediction, for it was written for man's benefit. Those who understand and acknowledge the truth are known as conspiracy theorists. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and be sure to share.